let's get into this whole Whole Foods CEO defending capitalism, and apparently like Joe Rogan defending socialism, which is I've seen the headline, so I'm curious as to the narratives being spun here, the talking points, the information being given to a massive audience. So let's check it out. Hold on, pull it up. All right, let's get to it.
Back to the subject of capitalism and Marxism and socialism. This right now we're in a wave of this, right? It's become more popular now. I would say over the last, particularly during the Trump administrations, the concept of socialism at least has become more publicly discussed than any time that I can remember in my life. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because the generation that's coming up is, I mean, you have to understand the academic community.
I am so, before he starts, I gotta say, I'm so excited to watch this video because the idea of I mean, what's this dude's like net worth? I mean, is he a billionaire or a millionaire? Let's check. Okay. He has an estimated net worth of more than $75 million. Okay. But, I mean, Whole Foods is a multi-billion-dollar company, is it? Whole Foods. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I forgot about that. Yeah, Amazon.com bought Whole Foods for $13.7 billion. Oh my God. Oh, oh, that's so good.
Is I always say the intellectuals have always been the enemy of business, certainly the enemy of capitalism. And
oh my God. I love this so much. I'm so excited for this video. Yes, the intellectuals are the enemies of capitalism. I don't think that's the argument you hope it is, or you think it is.
But why is that?
I think because
they're smart.
In a market society, which has been rare in history, we haven't mostly had market societies, but they're not very important in a market society.
The intellectuals aren't very important?
Generally not as important, no.
But aren't they the ones that inspire the minds of the people that create and maybe innovate in the industry?
They don't have the same social status that the entrepreneurs have. An Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos.
So you think it's an ego issue? The social status issue?
Think about it this way.
First off, I just want to reject the idea like academia is socialist or Marxist. Academia, especially in the U.S., and Western centric, is not Marxist at all. I'm sorry. Like at the very most, you're gonna get some social democratic sort of talking points from like political philosophy professors or political science professors or something like that. But or even like econ professors. But largely speaking, you're not. You just don't. You get the classical education. I'm sorry. Like that's. This dude's what, in his 60s? I'm guessing 60s, right? I mean, when's the last time he was in college? Was it in his 20s, right? So that was 40 years ago, let's say. So, 1980. Peak Wolf of Wall Street status, right? Come on, man. Come on. That's ridiculous.
If you're going to school, okay, and the people that end up teaching in the universities were always the smartest kids in the school generally, and they did well in school. I mean, smart in terms of doing well in school, and they go on to college, and then they go and get a PhD, and then they that's all they've known is school. That's been their universe, right? And they excelled at it, and they were smarter than the other kids in school. And now these other kids, they go to college and they get a degree in business and they're in a fraternity and they make a lot of friends and relationships and they make more money than the intellectuals do. And that seems like that's completely unfair. It's an unjust world. That this
Wait, what? Oh my God. His argument is like, I mean, pretty much literally just the intellectuals were the nerds in college, and they were jealous of the frat dudes who like got laid. Like that's basically what he's saying, right? Like that's the subtext of what he's saying, is that the nerds in school became like intellectuals, and all this like cool people. Like we became like frat boys, and like we drank beer because we like beer, and we became entrepreneurs, and we made more money than them. So that's why they're jealous of us. Oh my God. What is this?
Less smart people are making more money than the smart people do, and they have more status in the society. And I think that's underlying it is a resentment or an envy of a society that doesn't judge them to be as important as they judge themselves.
That's interesting.
I also want, in the pre-market societies, that, I mean, he rightly mentions, like, you know, it's very recent that we've created market societies in that true sense. That's obviously the birth of capitalism in like the 16th century. But in the pre-market societies that we had, like feudalism, the smartest people were not necessarily at the top of the class. Who were the top class in feudalism? Was it the intellectuals? Or was it the hereditary aristocratic class that still exists? That, like, oh my God. At least he's right, though. I mean, smart people are not like him, because he's not smart. That is very true. Whole Foods CEO. He is not an intellectual. He's an entrepreneur.
And first of all, the term smart is a weird term.
I said smart in terms of school. I didn't say in terms of street smarts or ability to do things, to connect with people. There's emotional intelligence. I'm merely saying they're good at taking tests, writing papers, abstracting thoughts, essentially.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. That, just the term smart, it's almost like, the problem is it's like a blanket term, right? It's like drugs. You know, like it applies to a bunch of different things that don't necessarily seem to be related. But the people that are interested in that, pursue that. The fact that they can't understand that there's an like Elon Musk is a great example. If you don't think Elon Musk is intelligent, you're either you're
not very intelligent yourself. You don't think Elon Musk is intelligent.
You're delusional, or you're a liar, or you're in denial.
Right.
It's one of those things. Is something wrong with the way you think? He's clearly.
The left does not think Elon Musk is an idiot. We think he's a predatory capitalist fucking robber baron. Okay? That's what we think.
Intelligent. But there's people that call him a fool. And that, like, the guy's running like 4 different businesses simultaneously. They're all successful. And he's innovating when it comes to space travel in a way that you would assume that someone have to dedicate most of their life just singularly to that task.
Yes, Elon Musk is the one that's building the rockets, not the teams of scientists and laborers. It's only Elon Musk with a hammer and nails building those rockets to go to Mars. Yep.
To be able to figure out past NASA how to shoot a rocket up into space and have it land,
right,
and then reuse it. No one's been able to do that besides him, or up until he did it. And I think Jeff Bezos' company is doing the same thing too now.
Blue Origin.
Yeah.
They're obviously two of the great entrepreneurs of this particular era.
But I don't think Jeff Bezos is actually engineering these things.
But if you think about it, the intellectuals have always disliked business. They've always discriminated against the merchant classes, the Jews in the West, Chinese in the East.
Oh my
There's
God.
Really been no historical.
Oh my God. Did he just say intellectuals are anti-Semitic? Because that's kind of what he said, huh? Oh my God. This is poison. I don't even know how to respond to that because it's just so egregiously false. I just can't. I just don't know how. One, we, in terms of Western Europe, if I can speak for them, we, long ago, decided that money lending, Okay, the idea of being a creditor and all that was immoral. So we didn't want to deal with it, us good Christians. So we made the Jewish people be moneylenders in Europe. That happened. Okay, it's not because they wanted to. Okay, it's because we forced them to. Secondly, the left being against business, being against entrepreneurship, being against the merchant class, and being against Jews. That's what he said. He against all of those, which are the same in his mind, because he equated them all. So he thinks they're all the same. No, that's not entirely true. One, we're definitely against the idea of capitalist business, of course. Like, that's just a reality. Does this guy not know about worker co-ops? Does this guy not know about the unionization movement, the charter movement in the 1840s? Who led those movements? It wasn't the entrepreneurs. It was us nerdy intellectuals that, according to him, weren't in fraternities, even though I was in a fraternity. And we didn't get laid in college, even though I was in a fraternity, and you know what happens. So, I mean, like, what are we talking about here? Like, what are we saying? Like, this is such bullshit propaganda and talking points that, I mean, it's archaic in its nature. The idea that, like, the socialists are the ones in control of academia and they're not cool and they hate Jews is such a old-timey talking point against the left. I don't even know, like, how to respond to it because it's so old. I feel like we moved past that.
Historical period where intellectuals praised business, maybe a little bit around the time of Adam Smith, up until probably Ricardo and Malthus wrote in the early 19th century. For the most part, business people have been seen, they're disruptive, they change things, they upset the status.
For those who want to know more about Adam Smith, I have a whole video dedicated to Adam Smith and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the Enlightenment, and how what he is saying about Adam Smith is just completely false. Okay, Adam Smith was wrong in a lot of his interpretations of capitalism, but he saw that capitalist businesses had to be empathetic to the people within their nation. Okay, he rejected neoliberal globalization. He didn't think it would exist. He was naive in his thought. He was wrong in his thought. Because he thought that big businesses and corporations had some sort of empathetical desire to their employees. That's a lie, but that's what he believed. I mean, the idea that Adam Smith was a guy that was like completely in favor of laissez-faire capitalism, which is the current capitalism that we have in a lot of ways, is just egregious and wrong in every way. Like, if you listen to classical economists talk about Adam Smith, it's usually incorrectly framed.
Quo, they innovate. Well, a lot of people don't like innovations. It's threatening. It changes social status. It changes wealth relationships. That it's almost like capitalism is like a genie that got out of the bottle, and they're trying very hard to stuff the genie back in the bottle as much as they can.
Well,
and I think if you think about it that way, you'll understand we're never going to win the intellectuals over.
Hold on, I got to rewind that part, because did he say what I think he said? I don't know if he said what I think he said, because if he did, that's just
they change things, they upset the status quo, they innovate. Well, a lot of people don't like innovations. It's threatening. It changes social status. It changes wealth relationships. That
innovation, first off, is not entrepreneurship. Why is he conflating the two? Why? To conflate them is just, one, incorrect from an empirical standpoint, and two, from like a definitional standpoint. Like, they're just not the same thing. And there's not a causality effect with them either. Like, entrepreneurship does not cause innovation by default. We have plenty of entrepreneurs that fail. And I mean, statistically, far more that do fail. Far more that go out of business. Why? Because of the monopolization of capitalism that is inherent in its system. Okay? Capitalism was started by the aristocratic class in England. Okay? And it was basically just an ability to separate the political and economic clout and power while still having both. Okay? So the inception of capitalism was held by the very few within the society. It wasn't this concept that like everyone was given entrepreneurship and then slowly over time we morphed into like some monopolies and we have to deal with that. No, monopolies are an inherent sort of birthmark of capitalism. Ridiculous. But let's keep playing this because that's just I'm sorry. The idea like that he's trying to conflate innovation with entrepreneurship just makes no sense. And the idea that intellectuals are against innovation is ahistorical. I mean, when we talk about the Enlightenment era, we talk about the scientific revolution. Those are all things in tandem. You know, in the 18th and 17th century, those are all things that happen in a lot of similar communities. Okay, a lot of similar minds had scientific innovations and philosophical and political and societal innovations. Okay, those innovations that we often praise, like from the founding fathers and shit, those came from the intellectual class in a lot of ways as well. So I don't know what he's trying to say here. It's just it's such an ahistorical framing of history that it's revolting, to be quite honest. And of course, Joe Rogan, Chief Chud, is not going to be able to really refute any of these points.
It's almost like capitalism is like a genie that got out of the bottle, and they're trying very hard to stuff the genie back in the bottle as much as they can. And I think if you think about it that way, you'll understand we're never going to win the intellectuals over. I mean, I speak in universities all the time, and the students, I'm an entrepreneur, I self-identify that way. Students love when I talk about conscious capitalism. Because I say, you can do good and you can do well. There's no contradiction here. You're the good guys here. You're not the bad guys.
Do you debate people about this?
I do. I've debated a number of socialists.
And what is their problem?
First off, I would love to see those debates with the socialists. Secondly, God. Think about it. His entire rant for 5 minutes has been about academia and intellectuals. And then he just says, I go to universities all the time and I'm able to speak. And people love me there. Like you said, academia was this like hotbed of Marxism and shit. What the hell, man?
Primary argument.
Their primary argument is that business is greedy and selfish, and it's about motivations. That business people have the wrong motivations.
No. In
a lot of ways, conscious capitalism.
No. We don't care about the motivations. Socialists do not give a fuck about your motivations, bro. We don't. The nature of the system is what we critique. It has nothing to do with you personally, right? It has to do with the system that you employ. Okay, the system of exploitation and extrapolation of one's labor and one's resources. Okay, that is what capitalism is innately. It doesn't matter what you personally think, or whether you think you're a good person, whether you think you pay your employees enough, whether you think you got them the good healthcare plan. It doesn't fucking matter. Okay, because the basis of this system is the extrapolation of labor and wealth, not only from your own employees, but from the long succession of capitalistic order. We talk about products and resources being farmed and mined in third world countries and then being built and shipped in other countries, and then getting here and being assembled here. There's a long procession of events of exploitation that happens to get your fucking food, your products in your stores. Whole Foods CEO, dude. I think his name McAnee, something like that. Tom McAnee, I think is his name. John Mackey. Sorry, John Mackey. You know, I and all this stuff is so easily refutable, and yet Joe Rogan can never do that. I'm a 25-year-old college dropout, and guess what? I can refute these points. It's not that hard.
is an answer to that. It's a complete answer to that, because in the book and in Conscious Leadership as well, we're basically arguing that business isn't primarily about maximizing profits. Business is primarily about creating value for other people.
No. Capitalistic businesses, capitalistic ownership is 100% for the maximization of profits, to maximize your singular or minority ownership of the means of production. That is what it's for. Okay, how did the first market society get born? To maximize the land and resources available to them. Let's cut off all these communal farming land and forests. Let's make it ours. We privatize it. Oh, you used to farm and work there and hunt there? Guess what? Now you have to work on this land, and we're going to pay you this very minimal wage. And guess what? If you don't want to work for that wage, you're going to go to jail. That's the birth of capitalism. Okay. Sorry. You can't get away from that. No matter how conscious you are, the system is inherently predatory. Okay.
And through creating value for other people, you do make a profit. But it's the value creation that comes first. The profits come second in exchange, right? And it's almost, if you are creating value, then you are profitable. And then you can reinvest those profits, and you have this upwards spiral. So that's that. Business has this potential for higher purpose. It's not primarily about greed. Greed is found in human nature, Joe. It's not just found in business people. There are plenty of greedy governmental officials, plenty of greedy politicians, greedy lawyers, greed.
I like how his first example of like non-capitalist interest is obviously the government, right? And I mean, if he spent 1 second reading the Communist Manifesto, you would know that's inherently anti-state ideology. So the idea that socialism is just when the government does stuff, and if the government does more stuff, that means it's more socialist. Like, that meme is literally being told right now by John Mackey. God,
it is
7 more minutes
endemic
of
to
this.
human nature. Business people either have no more or no less than it. It's just part of who we are.
Has anyone ever laid it out in a way that's very compelling? Like when you have these debates.
So, like, no one has more or less greed. Like, we all have the same level of greed. It's just part of us. It's just a weird perception of human personality, to be honest.
With socialists and someone,
Especially from like somebody that like claims to be like an individualist in the sense, because like if you're pro capitalism, you're pro individualism. The idea that like everyone is inherently the same level of greediness, I think, is innately non-individualist. But go for it, man.
Has anyone ever laid it out in a way that's very compelling? Like when you have these debates with socialists and someone, has anyone ever laid it out in a way where they have a point where you see their point?
The best way to do a debate is to completely understand the other side's position.
Yeah.
Understand it as good or better than they understand it. And so I've read widely in socialistic literature. I think I do understand it.
Name a book.
It's
Name a book.
A type of utopianism. It's
What?
an attempt to change human nature. If we would all we
What?
would all love each other, and if we don't.
No, it has nothing to do with human nature. Oh my God. I guarantee this motherfucker has only read David Ricardo. That's the socialist literature he talked about, because that's the only socialist he mentioned so far by name is Ricardo, who was a pre-Marxian socialist, who was an utopian socialist. But guess what? That shit went out of vogue 200 years ago. Like the 1820s was like kind of like the last of utopian socialism, being like the peak of socialist philosophy. Right after that, you get anarchism and Marxism that became in vogue, to use that term, right? So, no, like, again, and Marxism is innately not idealistic. It's innately not utopian. There's tons of works by Marx against utopian socialism. There's works by Frederick Engels against utopian socialism. It's utopian or scientific socialism is the name of the book. And guess what? There is a scientific approach when they come to systems of order within society and within economics. Okay. When we talk about the utopian communist society, we base it off the 1871 Paris Commune, for fuck's sake. An historical event, an historical organization that happened and materialized and was a revolutionary moment. That's the basis of communist society, not state, not government, but society, right? Because we are for the withering away or the abolition of the state, depending who you ask. But regardless, we are anti-state, anti-capital. Okay? And that's not about changing human nature. That's about changing systems of order. That's all it is. The system of order we have now is the minority rule at the very, very top. You have minority ownership of businesses and corporations, okay? Minority ownership of wealth, minority ownership of the means of production. That is stored at the very top 1% and even less than 1% of our population. That's the accumulation, hoarding of wealth is in that. We want to change the system, not human nature. Change the system of order when it comes to dealing with the distribution of wealth, labor, and resources. Okay? That's it. It's not trying to create a place where like all humans are perfect. We don't even think that. What are you talking about? This is so frustrating. So frustrating.
Human nature. If we would all love each other, and if we'd all share equally,
that's not what it is.
The world would be a better place. And hey, guess what? It probably would be if
this dude hasn't read a single fucking socialist piece of work, except for maybe Ricardo.
If we were naturally that way, but we're not naturally that way. We look first generally for ourselves and our own families, and then our growing circle of relationships that we develop. It's natural to want your own children to have advantages. That's just human nature, to want your children to flourish because you raise them, you love them. And somehow or another to say that's unfair is cutting against human nature. People are always going to look.
You want to talk about like what's natural? I'm talking about like a scientific evolutionary approach of like what's natural for animals and organisms. Okay. And Malatesta in his book Anarchy details this perfectly in like the first chapter. Okay. There is two basic functions for organisms. Okay. In terms of how we survive, how we live, right? Either through sort of solitary life. Think of, apex predators that in essence are the only one in their territory for like 5 square miles. Like think of, apex tigers or sharks, something like that. They're wanderers and they're isolated on their own. But then think about other organisms and animals that work through cooperation, right? Animals like certain apes, right? Lions, for example, wolf packs, right? Stuff that's like easy and that we've all seen with our eyes. We understand how certain animal groups develop systems of order and, in essence, society for the cooperation and survival of the group, right? What do you think humans fall in? From an evolutionary, scientific, not utopian, idealistic approach like John Mackey likes to talk about. No, let's talk about the science here. Where do humans fit in? Are we in the solitary, sort of apex predatory group? Or are we in the cooperation group? Are we, from an evolutionary standpoint, are we animals that our basic genetics drive us for community and for cooperation? Which one is it? I can tell you it's the second. It's the latter. Okay, if you didn't know that, because it's pretty fucking obvious. So when he talks about like we want to change human nature, no, we don't. Human nature is already about cooperation. Our system of cooperation, though, is designed to redistribute wealth to the very, very, very top where they don't have systems of order to redistribute that wealth back to us. That's all. So the cooperation order that we have now is one that is an innately anti-survival cooperation system, right? When we talk about like the sort of pre-capitalistic societies or even like pre-feudal societies, and you go back to sort of like tribal civilizations and organizations and societies, they function off of a lot of what we talk about when it comes to like animals and how they cooperate. It's one where everyone takes care of the group. Okay? That's in our base. Our basic understanding, our basic humanity is actually cooperation. So he's just wrong on every goddamn fucking level. Like, it's not even close. He's not even right about a single thing here. He's wrong at every level. Wrong with his premise, wrong with his understanding of socialism and Marxism, wrong with everything.
Look for advantages or privileges, so to speak, for their children.
Yeah, people don't like when people have advantages and have victories, because then someone has to lose. And when someone loses, they equate that someone losing with a bad feeling, with that person being victimized. Like this.
So here's a big idea we talk about in conscious leadership. We have a chapter called Find Win-Win-Win Solutions. The metaphors that we use to think about society tend to be very binary, good versus evil, light versus darkness, win versus lose. And so they tend to think of business as a win-lose game. Somebody wins and somebody else is losing. But the beauty of capitalism is it's a win-win-win game.
Oh my God.
It's an infinite game. It's a game because the customers are winning.
Yeah, those kids that are forced into child labor and working for 10 cents while they get their fingers chopped off. Man, that's just a thing of beauty, isn't it? Right? Right, John? Fucking idiot. God, I've never seen anyone so stupid in my life.
It's a game because the customers are winning, or they wouldn't trade.
Yeah, they win there.
The employees are winning. How are the customers winning? They're getting products and services and there's competition to make those services and products.
Like what? Like, if Joe Rogan doesn't talk about like impoverished workers in third world countries that work for U.S. corporations, like, what are you doing, man? Like, how are you this fucking stupid? And you have this big of a following if you're Joe Rogan. Like, you can't even bring up that low-hanging fruit, to be honest. Okay? Such an easy gotcha moment. It's like, you say this is a win-win for everyone, but what about the workers for Apple in India that are getting carcinogens in them and are getting paid nothing and are in destitution? What about those people? Are they winning? It's an easy fucking refute. And come on. Just gotta get through this now. This is awful.
The employees are winning because they have jobs and opportunities to grow. Benefits are paid, and they do that voluntarily. They're not forced to work for any particular company. They do it because they think it's in their best interest. Win for the employees.
All employees are forced to work. If you don't work, you die. That, in a sense, is forced labor. Sorry.
The suppliers who are trading with the business, they're winning as well, or they wouldn't make the exchanges. Investors are winning, or they wouldn't make the investments. And the larger society is winning because business is the engine that creates all the money that goes into nonprofits and governments. Without business, there is no government, and there is no nonprofit sector, because those are ultimately supplied through what business creates. So business is a win-win-win game. All of these stakeholders are winning, and that's why capitalism lifts society up. Socialism is an attempt to reverse that back to a win-lose game, and that's why it always fails, and that's why capitalism
How is it
always
an
wins.
attempt to bring it back to a win-lose game?
Socialism always fails. Dude, like we just had the Bolivian election, bro. Like, we just had these massive social movements in Latin America. Like, Cuba still exists, for fuck's sake. Venezuela still exists. What are you talking about? These are countries that have slashed poverty in half, have better life expectancy and literacy rates than we do. Like, what are you talking about? What world do you live in?
Game. In what way?
The ones that are winning, so to speak, the business people are clamped down, so they're not allowed to win. It's like, we're going to take your success and we're going to redistribute it. So that, as again, you said earlier on, incentives matter. But we're going to take away the incentives for business to really flourish and succeed.
This dude was clearly a frat bro in college because he talked about how frat dudes are entrepreneurs and they're the cool ones and the intellectuals are nerds in college. So we know he's a frat bro. And he's thinking these really archaic sort of paradigms and framing. I don't know how anyone eats this shit up. I don't get it. I don't know how anyone eats this garbage up because it just makes no sense in today's time.
We're going to take your success and we're going to redistribute it.
He's just worried about his own pockets,
again, you
man.
said earlier on, incentives matter. But we're going to take away the incentives for business to really flourish and succeed. They should do it from altruistic reasons. And we may do something.
We want to incentivize workers, but not businesses. We want to incentivize workers. How do you incentivize workers and laborers and your employees? Well, one, you give them ownership of the means of production. You democratize the workplace. It's very simple.
Some things for altruistic reasons, but you cannot build a society around it.
When you're talking about win-win-win, this is a very, in many ways, I see what you're saying, but there are things that are negative that are associated with profit and innovation and particularly expanding industry, right? Particularly environmental impacts. Like when you say win-win-win, like there's very rarely especially when you're dealing with creating and designing and building things, you've got a negative impact in some way environmentally.
Two points. First of all, historically, socialism's been far worse polluter than capitalistic countries. Well, if you just look at the environmental destruction that the Soviet Union left behind it, it was a complete disaster.
Right, but this is socialism done wrong, John. We're going to do it right here.
Who has done it right, Joe?
No one.
No one's done it right.
But the Soviet
Is he really trying to argue that the Soviet Union was a bigger problem for the ecological sort of nature of our world than global capitalism? Really? I mean, first off, India, in terms of like global pollution rate, talk about like China's marriage to Walmart, obviously in the 70s and 80s, that led to massive industrialization that led to pollution. Okay. But that was capitalist interests involved there. I mean, the idea that the Soviet Union was like left this massive environmental issue behind is just asinine. Is he thinking about like Chernobyl? Like, what? What is he talking about, man? Like the biggest coal producer in the world for like 150 years was fucking England, bro. Like, what are you talking about?
Socialism done wrong, John. We're going to do it right here.
Who has done it right, Joe?
No one.
No one's
Cuba.
done it
No
right.
one. But the Soviet Union is a bad example.
No,
because Stalin was.
Yeah, but all of Eastern Europe, there's no incentive to protect the common good in socialism. And they don't.
What?
And the government has a monopoly of all decision and
Socialism
power making.
socialism is not the government.
Environment. That's one of the myths.
You also take away agency from people, and you
What?
take away their desire to do better, and without incentive.
What would increase your agency as an employee? Having a democratic sort of power within the company or not? What would give you agency in a company? Having some ownership of it or not having ownership of it? I mean, come on here. Like, this is fucking grade school level arguments. I can't believe he's actually saying this. Why doesn't Joe Rogan have a fucking communist or Marxist economist on? Like, it's not that hard to have Richard Wolff on. It's not that hard to have David Harvey on. Like, maybe nowadays with COVID and their age, you have some issues there. But fuck, man. Like, come on. There's plenty of people that you can get in here that actually can explain to you what socialism is, what communism is, what Marxism is. That isn't just the government doing stuff. God damn it. Let's get through this, man. Like 3 more minutes. We got this, guys.
Attentive people just
been
don't
rough.
perform the same way.
But the beautiful thing about business, let's concede a partial truth to what you said, that there will be unintended negative consequences, as you say, environmentally. Well, that's why you have to regulate business to a certain extent. That's why you have to make people responsible for their environmental pollutants. And because business innovates and has an incentive to innovate, business can innovate and create solutions to those environmental problems.
Okay, let me stop you there for a second. When you say make people responsible for their environmental pollutants, then we're going to have to deal with another aspect of capitalism, and that's the effect that special interest groups and lobbyists have on politicians, because they create laws that shield these big businesses from consequences from these negative
The
actions.
first good point
So
Joe's
by
made all
saying that
fucking
they have to clean up their problem.
video.
The only way that's ever going to happen is if they're not protected, if they don't use that influence and money.
Totally agree.
So this is where I think a lot of people have a valid argument against capitalism. Capitalism has kind of fucked over our system of government in a way, because money has gotten so deeply involved with super
my
PACs
God.
and lobbyists, and there's so much money involved that it changes the way we govern things.
Is that a flaw of capitalism or is that a flaw of government?
I
It's
think it's
the
a flaw of
same.
government, but that government
It's
has
the
been
same.
influenced by capitalism. By capitalism.
Capitalism was started by the state. What do you... What are you doing? Who do you think allowed who do you think separated political and economic coercion? It was the fucking aristocratic class who had ownership of the state in England. And then who wanted to be privatized corporate ownerships, or owners, I should say. That's what happened. What are you fucking talking about? It's the same class of people. It's the ruling class.
It's a flaw of government, but that government has been influenced by capitalism, by capitalism's desire for universal growth, for constant growth.
The sad truth is that humanity is not perfectible. We can never create the perfect system. And
No
the attempt
one's
to create the
talking
perfect
about
system,
making the perfect
perfect
system.
enemy of the good.
Right.
No one is talking about making the perfect system. Oh my God. No one is talking about that. No one. All we want is a system where the means of production, the ownership of wealth, land, and resources, the exploitation of one's labor does not happen from the very minority. Okay? We don't want exploitation of one's labor. We want the ownership of land resources to be in the hands of the collective majority. That's all. Doesn't mean that the system's going to be perfect. It just means that it's going to be better. Fundamentally better. Foundationally better. But not perfect. God. This is like arguing with fucking middle schoolers, man. Like, you know for a fact Joe Rogan hasn't read any Marxist literature. Like, not a single one.
Capitalism is not perfect. It does not, because human choices and what people want varies.
No one
People-
wants capitalism to be perfect either.
Capitalism will sell cigarettes to people because that's what people want. It gives them pleasure, but it's bad for their health. But they're giving people what they want. It's the same thing in any type of externality. That's not That's not deliberately done to harm the society. It's sort of a byproduct.
Right, but this is why win-win-win doesn't really work. It's not really win-win-win. It's win most of the time, but with some negative consequences that are better than the alternative, right?
But what you strive for.
No, the best part is that like I saw so many headlines of like leftist YouTubers and shit talking about like Joe Rogan defending capitalism. If this is what you call a defense of capitalism, I don't want you to be a leftist. You're not with us, man. I'm sorry. If you think this is any sort of defense of socialism here by Joe Rogan, you need to fuck off.
Or is to take those externalities or those negative consequences and try to, through good government, to minimize them or lessen them. I'll give you an example. So you used to live in LA. Well, when I went to LA back in the early 80s, it was like going to New Delhi today. I couldn't see, my lungs hurt less than 24 hours.
Right.
But through good regulations, the air in LA is a fraction as polluted as it was 40 years ago. We have been able to clean it up. That is an example of how you can take the worst impacts of industrialization and
if he says that's an example of how capitalism innovates and fixes itself, what the fuck are you saying, bro? Because your whole argument is that the government doing stuff is socialism. That's your argument. So you're now saying that the government regulating businesses in California led to the depollution of air. Then that is inherently against your fucking premise.
and ameliorate them or lessen them.
Episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
That was awful. That was the most horrendous thing I've ever watched in my life. Oh my God. That was so bad. That was so bad. There's no part of that was pro-socialist in any ways. I'm sorry. Like I saw like Vosh out there who I'll be honest, I don't want to gatekeep. I hate that, but fuck, he is annoying in terms of his framing of issues because the dude constantly attacks Marxists and communists while defending this shit and saying that this is Joe Rogan defending socialism. I just God damn it. I need a palate cleanser from that bullshit.